Here we go, peeps. In this video, we're going to continue on with our studies of completing the square. If you haven't already watched it, watch my first video on why and how completing the square works, because this is going to be a practice of 3 problems so that you get really good at completing the square and you've got some extra practice to put under your belt. Let's check this out. The instructions: complete the square. So to complete the square, if you recall, we want to get something where we have a quantity squared. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put the -2 there because that's a part of the problem. When we do completing the square, we focus in on these first 2 terms. We know this has to be x because this quantity squared gives us x squared. We also saw in the previous video that you divide the b term by 2. I'm not going to go over the y in this video again. Watch that prior video if you want to see why that is. So we divide this term by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we're going to get plus 4 right there because it's a positive 4 when we divide by 2. Now, we don't just stop there, because if you were to FOIL this thing out, distribute it out, you would not get out the original expression, which means we just created something new, which is not good. We want to keep everything equal to the original part. What we did just do is, we just added in 4 squared into the problem randomly. So if we added in 4 squared, we have to take it out. So adding 4 squared is adding 16. At the same time, you need to subtract it out, and now everything has been balanced. So we just combine these terms and we get x plus 4 squared. -2 minus 16 is -18. If you were to FOIL all of this out, x plus 4 times x plus 4, minus 18, guess what you'd end up back with? This guy right there. Nice. And I'll do that. At the end of the video, I'll go over, let's check one of them just to show, oh, okay, it works. But for now, let's get into a rhythm here. This problem here, we're going to complete the square. So again, I start out with my basic template. I know that I've got to square out everything and I'm going to have -10 as my original number from there. And I'm focused in on this part. Again, I have an x. We're going to divide the b term, but 3 divided by 2 is not nice. And I wouldn't write it as a decimal. I'd write that as a fraction. So 3 divided by 2 is just simply 3/2. It's going to be plus 3/2 here, again, because it's a positive number right there. You know what? Just for giggles, I'm going to change that. And you might be like, Mr. Grodin, why not? Let's make it a -3x. That would make that a -3/2, just for giggles, right? So x squared minus 3x minus 10, that would be -3/2. Okay, again, we divided by 2, that b term, but now we got to figure out what we just added in. Well, it's the square of this term that we just added in, so let's look at that. -3/2 squared. That's -3 times -3 is +9 over 2 times 2. You just added 9/4 into the problem, so we're going to subtract out 9/4. And you might be like, fractions, we can deal. So we've got x minus 3/2 squared. 10 is 40/4. We need fourths to combine like terms, right? 40/4 minus 9/4. And I know that's gross, but we're almost done. We leave the completed square here because that really was one of our main goals. 40/4 minus 9/4, 49/4. And that's the completed square. Checking that, it will end up coming out to this, believe it or not. It's sweet. All right, one more. We've got a leading coefficient that isn't 1. What do? Have no fear. What we first need to do is actually factor out this coefficient from the first 2 terms. Again, the -10 is on its own. Just like the -10 was on its own there and the -2 was on its own there. So the -10 doesn't concern us. We want that to be 1. So we factor out 4 and you're left with x squared plus 4 goes into 8 twice. And then -10 is left out here. Now we're completing the square of this part right here. We can do this. So I've got 4, that doesn't go anywhere, it's still part of the problem, times, we know we're going to square it and we know we need x to get x squared. We're going to divide the b term by 2. 2 divided by 2, it's plus 1. All right, and we keep the -10. Now the question is, what did we just add into the problem? Well, we added in a 1 squared, hold on, there's a 4 out there, times 4. So 1 squared is 1. Times 4 is 4. So from this, we get a 4 that was never in the problem. So at the same time, we have to subtract out that 4 to balance things out. And pretty much we're done. We'll just condense that. So you get 4 times x plus 1 squared minus 14. And that's it. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just check this last problem, but what I've gone over for you are 3 separate types of examples where we are completing the square. One that is pretty straightforward, no fractions. One where there's a fraction, no big deal, just deal with the fractions. And one where we had to factor out so that our leading coefficient was 1. That was cool. All right, I'm going to check the answer to this, but that concludes it for the video. So if you're like, nah, I'm good, you can switch off. I would stay tuned for the check though. Here we go. So to check this, we want to make sure that this multiplies and then simplifies down to that expression. Otherwise, we've changed this expression into something else, which renders this technique unusable, right? So we want this to be equal to that. Because all we did is manipulate that, that's it, into a new form. So I'm going to first multiply this out. It's x plus 1 times x plus 1, right? Exponents first in this order of operations here. So we'll FOIL and then multiply by 4. Take your time with it. So remember, this is all a check. This is our answer right here. So 4 times x squared. X times 1 is x. Inside is x again. And then 1 times 1 is 1. Minus 14. So far, so good. Now, we're going to combine all the terms in there. So you're going to get 4 times x squared. X and x, 2x. Sweet. Plus 1 minus 14, we're almost done. Now we're going to distribute the 4 to everything. 4 times x squared is 4x squared. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times 1 is 4. Ooh, look where we are. We just got to combine those like terms. 4x squared plus 8x minus 10. And that is what we started with. It's equal, which is what we wanted. I can't wait to show you how to solve equations with this. It's a lesser known technique, but it's pretty awesome. See you there.